G'day and welcome to The Life Aquatic with Rob. G'day YouTube, Rob from The Life Aquatic here with another episode for you. And today we'll be starting a new series that I'm calling Tank Breakdown, where I take an episode to go in depth on each tank with what's in there and why in regards to stocking and equipment. And the first cab off the rank is the tank that we saw in the last episode, the 20 gallon that you guys saw scaped without any fish. So today we'll be looking at what I put in there. But before we get too far into the video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe if you do like the video. And as always, I'd like to take a moment to thank everyone who has already subscribed. We're up to 98, I think, at the time of making this. And I'm pretty stoked with the progress that I've made so far, so thank you guys. Now, as for the current stocking in this tank, you guys have seen it. Currently it has the pair of Kribensis cichlids in there, P.pulcher, which translated means beautiful belly colour. And there's also one Bristlenose Pleco in there, so A.cirrhosus, I think from memory. And as usual, all the identifiable fish have names, so the two Kribensis are Syd and Nancy. And I decided to name the Bristlenose Henley, after my favourite poet, although that name might need to change if it turns out to be a female. And of as much note as what went into the tank, you'll probably notice what's no longer in there. Those of you who watched the last episode would have noticed that I put shrimp in there, about 80 of them. Once I introduced these guys, they're Kribensis, within a few hours there were none visible, and I would suggest that by the end of the day there were none in there at all. Now the shrimp were culled, so I'm not particularly concerned about the fact that they died. It was just a bit of an experiment to see if I could get them to live in there together. And I may retry the experiment in a few months once that Java moss has had a chance to thicken up a bit. So today we've learned that Kribensis are a very poor choice of tank mate for red cherry shrimp. Yay, science! The other thing to note is that the two Kribensis, as you can see in the footage, paired up instantly as soon as they were introduced into the tank. But they've already provided me with the opportunity to make a video on how fickle cichlids can be. I'm pretty sure I'll do that video next, so keep an eye out for that one, and once it's done I'll put a link in the description. And I'll also put a link in there for the previous video on scaping this aquarium and getting it all set up. And now we've got some cool footage of these guys close up having a mung out on an algae wafer, just to have a bit of a look at while I prattle on in the background. The original idea for this tank was to stock it with princess cichlids, or Neolamprolagus brishadi I think, as one of my local fish stores had a bunch of them, and some of them were quite nice looking. But by the time I got back to get the fish, they had already gone, bar a couple of ragged, homeless looking specimens. So I decided to go with a tank with Kribbs as the centerpiece fish, and I'll probably add a small school of tetras or barbs, something that keeps to the middle and the top of the water column. So if you guys have any suggestions for what would look awesome in there, just drop them in the comments below and I'll certainly check them out. Now in terms of equipment in this tank, I'm running a 100 watt heater, and that's set to 23 degrees or 73.4 degrees Fahrenheit. Psst, you Americans really should take up the metric system. And the tank is running a large sponge filter in the corner, and that's run off a 4-outlet dynamic power air pump, which is running this tank, the hospital tank that's next to it, and aerating the spare water that I have lying around. And it's lit by a simple desk lamp hung from the rack above. And the bulb in that one, unfortunately I can't tell you the lumens or the wattage, as it was the one that was in the desk lamp. The one that's on the tank at the moment is a warm white one, and I went for that one because I like the way that the light plays off the rocks with it. I did buy a 1400 lumen cool white bulb for that tank, but I didn't like the way it looked compared to the other one, so I went with the other one. And whatever the one I'm using is, seems to be enough to keep the Java moss alive, which doesn't take much. In terms of substrate and decor, the substrate is just road base that I had lying around. So in this area that's crushed bluestone, washed very thoroughly obviously, For the most part, the rocks were stolen from my sister's garden, the big river rocks, and one came with the tank. The tank itself is a 20 gallon that I picked up for free with a bunch of other tanks. And the background is once again a Star Wars background, because you can never have enough of a little green old man with a massive green stick, and the droids and stormtroopers don't do too badly either. In terms of plants, I've got a few fake ones in there. Oh no, shocker. And I generally do put a few in when I start off a tank. They tend to blend in once you put the real plants in there. And of course there's a bunch of Java moss that I took out of the other tanks because that stuff grows just about anywhere. And it should pull the nitrates out of the water nicely. So all up, because I got the tank for free and used stuff that I had lying around, I think the total cost would be somewhere around 22 Australian dollars, not including the fish themselves, and I think 42 Australian dollars including the 2 Kribbs. And Henley the Bristlenose was one that I bred myself, so obviously he cost nothing. So really a pretty cheap setup. And now we cut back out to a wider shot while we listen to me prattle on once again. Before I go, I just wanted to mention that I'm quickly falling back in love with these guys. Kribbs are awesome little fish with heaps of personality, and the male in particular is extremely curious. I love him to death, and I'd recommend them to just about anybody. Just keep an eye on them, they can sometimes have a bit of a mean streak, and I do plan on doing species profiles on all the fish that I keep, so there will be one on Kribbs coming up at some stage, and once that one's done, I'll put a link in the description for that one as well. And now some footage of these guys getting their first feed of flake, which they don't seem to like very much. It's the first time they've had it. I'm pretty sure the pet store feeds them pellets. But these guys are well and truly onto it now, and they're eating it just like anything else. And for those of you who've made it this far, it looks like we've come to the end of another episode. A bit of a breakdown on this tank. I hope maybe you learned something from it. And I'd just like to take a moment to once again thank all the subscribers for the support. It's been amazing. And to encourage people, if you like this or any of the other videos, make sure you subscribe, hit that like button and share it out. And as always guys, look after each other and your fish.